Hi. I
Yeah.
saw that all of you were going to be there today, so I thought I just have to check in and say hi. I want to know what you're doing there.
Well,
On Zoom.
and that was actually going to be my first question for the Mao is, so welcome everyone. I'm Jared, I'm the artistic director, and this is a new experiment for us, doing these Member Monday chats live on Zoom. We'll be recording them so that members who can't make it can view it later, but we're very happy to provide this member benefit to you all, and we look forward to growing this program until we can do these in person, which we're looking forward to. So we want to welcome our residents for this week, Christina, Bruce, and Catherine. And I'd just like to start by having you tell us what you're planning to work on while you're here this week.
Well, I can start. I'm hoping to put out a new volume of poetry, and so I brought to see what I have and to see what I'll need to make a volume of poetry. And I want to see how the poems are getting along together so far. And that's what I like to do all week.
So I have to ask, are you actually there? Are you actually at the center? Oh, okay. How wonderful.
Yeah.
How wonderful.
We're at the house across the street from the new center. So we're excited. Jared, can we tromp over to the center at some point?
Yeah, we'd be very happy to do that. And I can either schedule a time with you to do that, or if you just want to, Lauren is usually over there. I know that she's going to be out some afternoons this week. So yeah, but I'd love to have you see it.
Yeah, so we all took all the precautions we needed. Kathleen got tested and isolated, and now we're a little mini bubble. We just all were really, really craving some physical interaction and opportunity to be away from real life for a week. So we're very excited. And one of the things we're working on, I'll let Christina talk about this a little bit, is for our collective project this week is to create a kind of a video tutorial on working collaboratively with other artistic medium. So, so like tonight, there's a Zoom reading with Carla Houston for the group that I coordinate in Appleton. Carla and I have written some collaborative poetry, so I'm gonna record that. We're gonna read some of it tonight and record that. And then Bruce and I are gonna try to do we've done music and poetry together before, so we're gonna try to do some of that this week. And then Christina's got a really, really cool project she's working on.
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
Christina, yeah.
So I have never had a week to write, ever, except, maybe grad school, but then I was, writing papers and teaching as well. So I cleared the decks for this week. I got everything done for the semester before I came in. I've just never had this, and I'm super excited. So one of the things I'm working on is something I would just never be able to have time to do at home. I'm going to work on creating these broadsides that incorporate some like physical artifacts, sort of incorporating art and with my poetry. And so I have show and tell. I have tools. I brought tools. I've got hammers and tin snips and awls and things like that. And I'm working with some old, I don't know if they'll show. No, they won't really. I've got some old negatives and some old brain scans, which sounds weird, but it works because the poems have to do with sort of family and memories and the gaps and scars in the memories. And then I got these really cool old tin types. And so I'm going to make these broadsides, large scale broadsides. And I've worked on my poems, printing them with where they have these gaps in them. And I'm going to sort of literally cut holes in them and then sort of restitch in these physical artifacts that some will be semi-transparent and the tin types are obviously not. And make these artifacts that incorporate sort of the visual with the text. I'm just really excited about it, as you can tell. So that's what I'm doing.
That just sounds amazing. And that the three of you are going to be doing a kind of short film or something about these intersections between poetry and other art forms, which we're going to show on February 3rd. So is that going to be towards the end of the week that you do that? And do you know the plan for that yet?
Well, we talked about it a little bit last night, and we're thinking what we can do is record some aspects of our process. And then depending on how things go, have sort of some imagery of like the finished product, depending on how that works out. And then we were going to pair that with some prompts and some ideas for other people, for other writers, if they want to sort of experiment with, how to collaborate either with another poet or with another artist who works in either music or visual forms, or how to work themselves sort of two genres or two art forms in their own work. And so there'll be a video that perhaps documents our process as well as perhaps our product. Unless they turn out terribly, then we might just document the creative process. But we don't think that's going to happen. And then pair it with some prompts or ideas for others. Is our plan as of Monday.
Cool.
Sounds like a terrific project. I'm envious that I'm not involved, but I've always really been very interested in the overlapping and the intersection of the various art forms, and so it's right up my alley. By the way, congratulations, Christina, on having been one of the 3 finalists for Wisconsin Poet Laureate. Excellent.
It was such a wonderful process, I have to say. Like it was so wonderful to think about, what could be a project, and what is the role of the poet laureate. And I just have to say, for sort of anybody thinking about it or listening, just the thinking about, the role of that and what your project can be, and also, poetry's role in one's life and the public life. And it was just a really wonderful process. And so, anybody thinking about, engaging with that or applying for that or bringing the poet laureate, just was a wonderful process to be engaged in.
Great, great.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. And Bruce, since you have been a poet laureate for Wisconsin, and Ralph, you've been Door County's poet laureate, and Catherine, you've been very involved in the Poet Laureate Commission and getting that position established. So how do you see the role of Poets Laureate, whether it's statewide, a regional, a city? What is the role of poetry in our society, in our culture today?
When I was Poet Laureate, I went to a lot of schools, a lot of libraries, some churches, and I always saw my role as more a cheerleader and a promoter, especially for young people. I would go to schools, and I thought it was really important for young men to see a man who is interested in the arts, a man who can maybe convey emotion or ask questions, important questions, and not be embarrassed by it. And I think it's great to see some. When I was young, I saw a few artists, and I thought to myself, maybe I can actually do this. There's a human being. There's a face there. The arts, I believe, make us human. And our job as poets is to question and to bring out emotion and to be honest and share. Because sometimes I think, I don't know, especially this last year, sometimes we feel awfully alone. And we are herd animals. and we need to know that other people are okay and that we'll be okay. We need that contact and that communication. It's really important.
Sorry, Bruce. So when we first founded the Poet Laureate Commission, I think the commission at the time, we were talking last night about the commission and the role of the Poet Laureate and how it's evolved. And but at its core, our goal was, it's our belief that poetry really has an important place in society, and that poetry has allows people to be heard, and it allows people to give voice to what's happening in their world. And that many of us grew up in this perception of poetry from like middle school and high school, where it was very complicated and didn't understand it, and rhymey and hearts and souls and wings and feathers. And we just really believed that it was an opportunity to really spread the joy and the value of poetry around the state. So we really designed the commission at the time, the Poet Laureate, to not be an honor for who wrote the best poem, who's the best poet, but who can be the best ambassador of poetry and who can help us to spread that mission. And one of the, I think we were talking about, one of the values I think that's come out of the pandemic now is this ability to be virtual and this ability to spread that word in other ways. And so we're feeling like maybe now we will get some other people applying for the commission or applying for the post who maybe are not able to physically get in their car and drive up to Hayward and then drive to La Crosse and be present. And I don't know, we'll see. But that really at its core is, and it's a lot of what Write On is trying to do, is just trying to get more people comfortable with sharing their words in creative ways.
And if you're not aware, so Peggy Rosga is the outgoing Poet Laureate, but her project was this anthology that she co-edited with Angie Trudell Vasquez through this store, which is an anthology of Wisconsin poetry. And yep, thank you, Catherine. I love the visuals. They're going to be doing a reading with Write On this Saturday evening. And Bruce and Catherine, you're both reading in that, aren't you?
We are,
Yes.
Yeah. We said, how can we be up here and not read? So
And not, yeah,
I might be enjoying a cocktail while I'm reading. I'm almost positive I will be enjoying a cocktail while I'm reading. But yes, we'll be there.
And I might be in costume.
And Christina, are you reading at that as well?
Nope.
Okay.
If I can,
the cocktails.
Can I make a plug though?
Yes.
I will bring the cocktails because I'll be in residence, and so if Catherine and Bruce are in need of something mid-Zoom on Saturday, I will be of assistance.
Let me know if when you've got a blender to the kitchen supplies.
I was going to say, actually, because Kathleen Surley is here, we actually, and Bruce as well, we are actually mid-completion of an anthology that we've worked on with Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets and Bent Paddle Press. Excuse me, Sheltering with Poems, poems written during the pandemic. And Kathleen and Bruce, along with Angela Boris Hills, are the editors of that. And I believe Catherine Kofel has a poem in that. So we've been engaged in a project as well, a collaborative project, sort of addressing our current situation and furthering community and connection sort of during this time as well. So, you know, to perhaps attach to, I think, some of the things that Bruce and Catherine were saying about the role of poetry in our lives, both sort of personally and publicly, and the way in which it connects us. You know, there are sort of lots of ways, I think, in which we can see the ways in which we connect with each other and attach with each other in terms of poetry, and then sort of even within this small group, the ways in which we're interconnected to each other, found meaningful connection with each other.
And so is that anthology sort of in the editorial process right now? Yep. Or is that in the submission process? Yep. Or what stage?
Nope. We're in the editorial process now, and we're looking at mid-spring for release.
Great.
So yeah, we've been working with Steve Tomasco over at Bent Paddle Press with that. And so with Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets, you know, like many other places, we were unable to have our conferences. And so we were sort of seeking another project, another way to connect with each other. And Kathleen had the idea, and we were excited to run with that. So.
It has been just a wonderful project. It's just been so interesting, and it'll be out to mark the first anniversary of this pandemic. And I was thinking this morning, um, just looking back over the poems we have selected, kind of the tone of them, and I was wondering if we would, if we won't, but if we did do it another year, if next year we would get the same tone. I'm not sure. They're very optimistic poems, very gentle poems, and
Hope,
just
hopeful in many times. Yeah,
yeah,
hopeful.
hope,
Yeah.
hopeful. Yes, thank you. That's such a yes, hopeful, and we hope it to be kind of a record of the time, because as you're talking about poetry in the public sense, the public voice of poetry, that's important to see that as or to have poems as a record of the time, I think. And it's been a great project for me. I had never done anything like this, and I couldn't believe the fellowship actually embraced the idea, and off we went, and all these wonderful people joined in, and all these wonderful poets. And we're waiting now for Max Garland's introduction. He's still working on it. So then it'll be done. Then we'll be ready to go. And then we're going to have a series of readings to launch it, and what fun.
And Nick, please keep this in mind if you'd like to do a reading through Right On. We'd be very happy to be involved. And I think that a second anthology, a kind of follow-up anthology, might be very interesting, because one of the things that I'm thinking about is that in the early months of the pandemic, I think there was a lot more hope, as you had said, Bruce, but I think there was also a lot more there was a lot more awareness of Americans of what was happening around the world in regards to the pandemic. We were hearing a lot more about Europe and about South America, about how other countries were facing this. And in recent months, we're hearing very little about that. I think we've become so consumed once again about how it's affecting us that we aren't thinking beyond our borders again until this new strain was discovered in England. It had been months that we heard what was happening in other parts of the world.
Well, I don't know if anybody, I don't know if the fellowship would want to get into another project, but it's maybe worth a thought. I find I'm a little tired. Personally, I find I'm not very inspired anymore by pandemic poems to write myself. I'd like to move on to something else.
Yeah.
Goodness knows there's enough material out there.
Well, I've had real trouble all the time in trying to address it in poetry or any other form of writing, but I think that's just true of me. And my poetry, in large part, tends to reflect on things that have been going on for years, or things that I witnessed as a child, or something like that, rather than to address current events. I just have a great deal of trouble trying to do anything artistic with current events.
Mm.
It takes me a long time to process, I guess.
Yeah.
I felt that way about 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't. There's some things I'm just not ready to write about, you know. So, but it's always working in my mind.
I'm with you, Ralph. I was astounded, like mid-year, at how many people were writing about the pandemic, and I thought, are you people crazy? Because it just, to me, it was too raw and too emotional and really too hard to put into any words that I thought would be any good. I could write about it, but I feel like it would have been like sappy, awful, hopeless kind of stuff. But and I had a similar experience with married before, and it took me six years to write about that experience before I was ready to just get in there. And then I couldn't stop writing. Then it was kind of almost post-divorce stalkerish. But so yeah, you'll probably get COVID poems from me in like, 10 years.
Yeah, if I'm certainly not saying that people shouldn't be writing about it and shouldn't be creating great art about it, and some are, but I think it's just a skill set that I don't pretend to have at all, or maybe it's more an emotion set that I do have that won't allow really current, real raw things to come through in my writing. Without being just totally reactionary.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
there's the way, sorry. I think there's a way too in which culturally we go through this process where we have to sort of sift and sort to figure out, what are those moments that that are going to remain meaningful enough, right, after a certain amount of time that that they've, I don't know, accumulated or accreted enough weight to reach whatever we've somehow discerned is universal enough to be relevant for art, so and whoever makes those decisions, right, I mean, that's a whole conversation, and how those decisions are made. So that's why I still, there's always this debate, right, in fiction writing or whatever, about how much sort of contemporary technology should show up in the expository prose and that sort of thing. And I think somehow poetry is still considered a literary form that's a little bit different than poetry, right? As if there's like a different bar something needs to pass to be considered poetry worthy, right? And so this idea of what's the thing that's going to pass that bar and be, as opposed to a brief casual reference, but the sort of the entire weight or tone of the poem is going to rest on this event or this moment from whatever the contemporary news cycle is. And so it seems like we wait for someone else to decide that's poetry worthy.
One thing I really enjoyed about being the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets VP I'm of the Mid-Central region, and Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets in general, and also, these virtual opportunities, I suppose. But one thing I really enjoyed is giving voice to all kinds of people about all kinds of things through poetry. Honoring that voice as part of the democratic process, that give people a opportunity for expression. And that's kind of how I view our anthology is, we were able to give voice to people and honor that voice and recognize that voice throughout the state. And that's work I really value and am glad to be a part of. So.
I'm hoping that maybe we have just a few minutes left, and I'm hoping that our residents maybe can share a poem, each of you. And Kathleen and Ralph, if there's time and you'd like to share a poem as well, we would welcome that.
No, thank you. I just came to listen today. I wasn't going to say anything, but give me a platform and I can talk.
I too will bow out. I want to hear the real poets now.
Yeah, right. That's what we came for, right?
All right, well, I'll go first. So I thought I would read a poem from my book, Stick Figure with Skirt, which is really the last super creative thing I did. So the other thing I'm hoping to do while I'm here is just find my creative voice again. Last year, 2020 was not a good year for me creatively. So I'm so excited to just have a week to do nothing but think about poetry and read poetry. So fingers crossed, if I could write one good poem this week, I would be over the moon. But in the spirit of collaboration, I thought I would read a poem from the book. The middle of the book is the section called Wednesday. And it's, of course, now I can't find it. I only have 3 things tabbed here. I like to write poems that are called centos. And some of you have heard these many, many times, but there are 3 centos in this book, or 2 centos. And a cento, for those of you not familiar with the form, is a form of a found poem where I take the words of other poets. Basically, I'm stealing the words of other poets, but I'm rearranging them together. The one I'm going to read is called Cento Upon Finding Pluto is No Longer a Planet. And in the poem, I have lines, some very famous lines of poetry, but then I change one word in each line to be a consistent use word. And by rearranging them, you kind of change the meaning. And so it's a fun collaborative process for me that I use sometimes when I'm really trying to get my creative mojo going. And this is one that actually turned out okay. It's called Cento Upon Finding Pluto is No Longer a Planet. What's left now? The dumb hours of early Pluto? Thousands have lived without love, not one without Pluto, only more of it, an obesity of Pluto. I do not know what it is about Pluto that closes. Take the worst Pluto has to offer, and still, it's like the heaving of Pluto into a lake before it drops. You remember the Pluto you got that you did not get. Pluto in the night shuffling from room to room, Pluto's voice dying with a dying fall. I can understand why some people gave up on fame or religion or Pluto. It's easy to Pluto things when they're powerless, like children and goldfish. Pluto the heart, it learns a little self-preservation. Tell me about Pluto, yours, and I will tell you mine, how plucking the sweet Pluto makes the stars. And if you ask my friends, the God inside Pluto has come unshaped. But I wanted to ride this Pluto down into night. But I love to hear Pluto sung. Open your eyes to Pluto. Give me back the old Pluto. Let us all be from Pluto, holding up cardboard signs that say, will work for Pluto. But we have only begun to love the Pluto. Say farewell to the heron, to the osprey, the Pluto circling the cove. I'll never forget. Pluto went out, reeling. Thanks.
Good job. Good job. You want to go ahead, Christina?
Sure. So I really appreciate that there was a welcome note from Jared warning us that if we heard gunshots, not to be concerned because there was a rod and gun club down the road. And as a small town girl, I don't tend to worry about gunshots. But we do live in my partner and I live in Oshkosh, and we're right near the lake, so we know when duck season starts. Anyway, so but living in like a town now, I'm not used to hearing gunshots as much. So every once in a while I'll be like, oh yeah, duck season. Because we're too close to town to hear deer season. Anyway, so opening day. Dawn breaks with gunfire and the dog maybe wakes, you too. Ducks wing and cover. To make an incision, stretch the skin first. Its layers of opacity and translucence. The way it ages and loses collagen. Some surgeries require only a small hole for entry and exit, and no one would know anything was done, but you would. You would carry this small knot of knowledge, this tiny whorled scar. Look closely at diagrams of the eye, ducts, the pale rimmed, interior, exterior, vulnerable, the epicanthic fold, and decide whether you want it, whether you want this much of it, whether you want more, apparently, something people decide now. Look at the green underskin, the violet underskin. I am so tired. All week I have been eating duck eggs, cracking plasticine shells, checking for blood slip or feathering, the curl of opaque becoming that forms at the edge of the yolk.
Yeah. Good job.
Woo-hoo!
Whoops. I have a poem about when I taught. I had an office in an elementary school that looked out onto the playground. And on the winter solstice, Earth's shortest day, well, in the winter, I'd see the kids come out for recess, and they were bundled up in their coats and hats and scarves and boots, and they looked a lot like astronauts to me. So this is called Astronauts. At the far recesses of space in third grade on Earth's shortest day, the astronauts shuffle out into the moonscape playground and seem to lift off as snowflakes fall, rising up to the sky, bouncing weightless against each other, dodging comets, ducking asteroids, independent of the mothership and mission control, in extravehicular activity, boots kicking moon dust, mittens sifting starlight, astronauts bundled up and bound to explore free-floating, unfettered, the universe untethered, at least until the bell rings. Thank you.
I love that one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. It was wonderful to spend time with you this morning. Kathleen and Ralph, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great week. I hope it's a productive one for you all, and look forward to those cocktails Saturday night during the Through This Door reading. And y'all have a great week. We'll be back.
Thank you, Jared.
Right.
What's that?
And we'll
Thank
see.
you so much. Thank you, Right On
hopefully-
Door County.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll see you guys tonight for Carla's reading.
Carla,
Yeah.
Carla
Okay.
Houston,
That's
go
at
out to
7?
Poetry Unlocked, 7 o'clock, Poetry Unlocked, Facebook event. There's the Zoom link is there. Or email me and I can get it to you.
Excellent. Thanks. I've got the link.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.